Hi, my name is Dennis Siri. I am Executive Director and founder of the New York City Independent Film Festival, Independent in Spirit, International at Heart, and this is the New York City Independent Film Festival Meet the Filmmakers podcast. Join us while we meet this year's filmmakers. Thank you. Bye bye. Yes, hi. Welcome to this episode. We're talking to Andre and Vito Gogola from the film 115. Hi, guys. Welcome. Please introduce
Hello.
yourself and tell us about you.
My name is Vito Gogola, and I'm Andre Gogola, and we're two filmmaker brothers. Basically, we make movies together, and we're born and raised in Stockholm, Sweden. And I'm 29 years old, and you were 31. Yeah. And we're basically filmmaker brothers. We made movies since we were kids, basically. I guess we started making movies more professionally when I was 20 and you were 18. I actually think it's like a 10-year anniversary. We started shooting our first short film back in 2014. So yeah.
Cool.
So we're celebrating.
You're celebrating your 10th year anniversary.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. All right. So what made you decide to become filmmakers? What made you decide to do it all?
I know when I actually don't remember this, but you remember this. So I'm gonna steal your memory. But so apparently we were maybe I was 11 and he was 9, I think, or something like that. And we were watching Jurassic Park. And apparently I asked my parents, so what does a film director do? Because I think I've heard about the term or something. And my dad explained to me what it was. And I think maybe that was a moment where I kind of started thinking maybe I could direct films. But I don't remember this happening. You remembered it. Yeah. So, but maybe, somewhere around 10 years old. So I think we have Steven Spielberg to thank for our interest, maybe. I don't know. Well, that's good. All right. So you also answered my next question is how long have you been doing this? So in some ways you answered, but if you want to talk more to it, that's great. Yeah, we've been doing this more professionally for around 10 years. We have made short films before that, but I think 10 years ago we started to make it a bit more professional, reaching out to media and holding screenings. So I think maybe 10 years would be the more professional duration we've made films. But we made short films, amateur films when we were kids as well. So I think maybe in total it's probably 20 years or something like that since we started making movies. Yeah. Well, it's almost your whole life. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right. So what did your friends and family say when you said, okay, we're going to be filmmakers? Were they like, oh, go get a degree in engineering, and then after that you can decide to do it on the side? Or they were like, okay, yeah, go get a degree in filmmaking. What was the reaction? Our parents have always been supportive, but in terms of friends, I don't think they really supported us necessarily, but they've never discouraged us from pursuing a career in film. So I don't know. Would you add something to that, or no? Our parents in general have been extremely supportive. They've never been "Now maybe you should pick a more secure job" or something like that. They've always been very supportive. We actually do have degrees in other fields. So you studied language, and I studied journalism. So we do have day jobs. But we also studied film, and our parents have been very supportive in general. They've never hesitated to support us, which I think is something that maybe we overlook a little bit because it's always been there, that support. But I think if you don't have that support, you might feel like that's missing, So we feel very privileged in that sense. But then with friends, it's pretty much the same there. I think our friends have been supportive. They've never been oh yeah, but that's you're not gonna succeed, being a filmmaker because that's not a real job, maybe some friends have been like curious, like how are we going to like put this together more in a more practical sense, like how are we gonna survive and get food on the table while also making movies, which is pretty expensive thing, or can be pretty expensive, but they've never been like discouraging. So again, that's a privilege that we have, that we've had those people around us, I feel.
I think so too. That's great. All right, I guess my next question is, do you have a tribe, a group of filmmakers where you live? Let's say like this group of filmmakers that's your core people that know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a couple of friends who also make films, both in like both domestically and non-domestically. So we have friends that are based out of LA or like in India as well, and yeah, all over the place. But I don't know, like we rarely talk about like, oh yeah, you should do that. It's more like, oh, what are you working on right now? Let us know if there's any way we could help you with your new project and things like that.
Try to help each other,
Yeah.
and keep yourself updated about what friends are doing and stuff. Just adding to that, I also feel like we might not have the tribe in the sense that you have like kind of a almost like a collective of people that you work with. We know a lot of people who work with movies, but we're all kind of spread out, and then you try to help someone there, or you get help from someone else. But I think the close tribe that we have perhaps is the two of us. Working as a duo, I think is something that, again, with when you have something from the get-go, you don't really think about the privilege of having it. But I have heard from other people who are also embarking on this journey, trying to be a filmmaker or an actor, but they're doing it alone. So I've heard them say like, yeah, but you guys must be very happy to have each other. And to be honest, I don't think about it that much, because I've always had my brother and worked together with him. But that's also something I think is kind of our tribe, the fact that we can just bounce off ideas of each other or support each other, things like that. So I think that's kind of the tribe that we have, each other. Yeah.
That's great. All right. So what made you decide to make this movie, this particular movie? Whose idea, and how did that happen?
So we had like a couple of scripts for short films that we basically showed to many of our friends, and you said like, which of these scripts speaks to you the most? So basically we just kind of listened to their feedback, and then also did some like counseling between the two of us, and from that like information attainment, we kind of decided like, yeah, let's go with 115, the horror script we wrote.
Yeah, and I think with that story specifically, I think maybe because it's about something that a lot of people can relate to, maybe, especially in our age. They're trying to date, and they're doing it through like dating apps like Tinder and stuff like that. And there's, there is this kind of like this aspect of like rejection and fear of being rejected, and also meeting someone that you don't know, you've only met online. So there are some fears there. So we thought of like, what if we used those fears, but amplified it in a horror film?
A lot of people seem to respond to the aspect of like a horror film about dating apps. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of our friends are kind of from that culture, like the same age as us, like using dating apps and things like that. So I guess that kind of resonated to them in some way.
Yeah, it's kind of like the elevator pitch, in a sense. Like when you say like, oh, dating app horror short, it's like people all immediately get like ideas of what that could be. So I guess we have some like leeway just by the fact that we have such a simple log line, or it's pretty easy to understand.
Okay, cool. What was the hardest part and what was the most fun of making this movie?
You want?
Well, I guess the the hardest part is like, I guess you just kind of knowing when you've made the right decision and things like that. Kind of like, it's very hard to know if you kind of made the film scary enough and things like that as you're making it. You really have to get feedback from people watching it to know, like, okay, people are genuinely being scared by this. And then I also guess like a dimension of it is kind of like just being more comfortable in the producing role for us as well. Kind of like knowing more like, okay, next time we do a project, maybe we should like focus more on this aspect of the producing and things like that. So I guess that was the hardest part, I guess, for me at least.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I liked the most with making this film was, and I actually didn't think that it would be this enjoyable, but it was actually just showing it to other people, because in previous projects, I've kind of been more like, kind of had this like tunnel vision of just making the film the way I want to make it in a way. But I didn't think so much about like the screening the film, because you're so nervous and everything. But this time we actually had a very good experience showing it at the premiere screening in Berlin, when we sat like in the audience with a bunch of people that we didn't know.
Mhm.
So if they wanted to, they could have just like booed at us or say something bad. But it turned out that they really enjoyed the film, and you could hear it in their reaction as well as we were sitting there. And I actually felt like, yeah, I was very happy, because it's been so much work making this film. So to actually hear that feedback instantly was something that I felt was a very like enjoyable part of it. And you might say that it's obvious that that should be enjoyable, actually showing the film. But to me, it was more about, like previously, I thought more about making the film than showing it to other people. And now it kind of became this like, I don't know, this developed thing where you get to hear what other people thought of your film, and it kind of becomes like their thing as well. It's not only like our thing, it's something that we share with other people. So I thought that was a very enjoyable part of it.
Okay. All right, cool. Great. After you finish a movie, do you sit there and look at it and constantly say to yourself, I could have done that better? Or do you sit there and say, okay, that film's done. I'm going to learn from my mistakes and move on? What kind of a filmmaker are you guys?
You
Uh,
go first.
well,
Do you have a good response to that?
I guess I feel like it would be kind of a very tragic experience, at least for me, to feel like, this one sucked. Let's make a better one.
Not suck. Just you sat there and you said, why did I use that shot? I could have
Oh
used
yeah.
one.
Yeah, well, I guess that's kind
not
of
to that extent. Just
yeah,
something
yeah.
simple.
Well, if it's like just small details, I think that's just like that's just natural. Kind of like if you take something very seriously, there's always going to be some flaw that you spot with your work, whether you're a filmmaker, artist, or engineer, or whatever. So I guess I try to just brush it off, basically, not get too obsessed with it, and try to just focus on the fun part of filmmaking, basically. And actually, it's funny enough. Like you mentioned the experience we had at the film festival in Berlin.
Yeah.
And I kind of had the same reaction. Like before we showed it in Berlin, I actually felt kind of like, I wonder how this film is going to be received, because we worked on it for so long. So I was kind of like thinking, considering how much work we've put into it. I was kind of like, I really hope this is going to pay off, considering the time we spent on it. But the reaction was kind of like exactly the type of reaction we wanted. So that kind of emboldened my confidence in the film. And yeah, I guess that kind of goes into like, as long as I feel like on average that the film was a success, I'm always like, okay, on to the next one. Try to just be better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't have that much to add, but I do feel like I'm not like that troubled by previous mistakes anymore. Like I don't feel that it's like, oh, why did I do that? I feel more like when I watch a film I made like 2 years ago, for example, I kind of see like the decisions I made back then, and I'm kind of like learning from myself, like, oh, I thought that was a good idea back then. I wouldn't do it that way now, but it's kind of like, kind of like a carpenter or something getting better at his craft. It's like, that's kind of the enjoyable part I feel about being an artist or being creative,
Yeah.
is to learn what you could improve on. So it's kind of like this process that goes on for your entire life. So I feel like if I would be like in the same spot now that I was in 2 years ago, I don't know, it would feel like I would be standing still in a way. And I don't want to stand still. I want to progress. So, yeah.
Very cool. So let's say, your nephew comes along or your niece and says, Uncle Andrew, Uncle Vito, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be an indie filmmaker just like you. What would you guys say? What would be your response to them?
That's a good question. Do you know anything?
Yeah, I think I honestly think like the most important thing is just to make movies, I feel, because there's so much advice out there, like, yeah, you should do this and you should think about this. And I think that's kind of like just like specifics, details. I think the most important thing is that if you want to do something, you oftentimes pay a higher price not doing it and regretting it than you do just doing it, and then you fail miserably, but then you try again, So yeah, I just think like if you have a dream of you want to make a movie, just make a movie. And I think the rest is like you'll pick that up later. I don't think you need to like theoreticize too much. Just go out there and do it.
But actually, I think he's kind of stealing that advice from Ingmar Bergman, because
he said that.
yeah, but in a good way. But
Yeah.
like,
It's a good model.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and
Very Swedish.
yeah, because there
think?
was this other Swedish director called Lucas Moodysson, I think is the pronunciation, and he made like a debut film here in Sweden that got really big, and Ingmar Bergman really liked that debut. He was like, oh, it was my favorite of that year. And then this director made a sequel, and that sequel kind of it was a little bit different from the debut. It was more funny, more upbeat, more like a feel-good film, basically. Mm-hmm. And Ingmar Bergman didn't really like that film as much because it was kind of like more of a, like, what do you call it? Like
feel-good movie.
Yeah, a film for the masses. Just people watch it, they feel good, and it is a good film, but it's not as serious of a drama as the debut. So anyways, Ingmar Bergman saw the second one and he was like, well, I didn't like that one as much, but my advice to Lucas, the director, would be to just keep on making movies from now on, because like you gotta the mission for a director, I guess, is just to keep making movies and keep learning. And funnily enough, I also think that Woody Allen kind of borrows that like way of thinking, because he's also like makes a film every year, much similar to Bergman. So I think there might be some wisdom in that, and like just keep making films.
Keep on moving.
Yeah, keep on learning.
Yeah.
Get into the rhythm of it, basically.
I do have another thing if we have time. It was
Sure. Yeah,
quite
plenty of time.
a lot of things to say, but so one like specific advice maybe is that like a couple of years ago, I think I felt a bit more kind of concerned with how I was perceived, like among my filmmaking peers, and like what you're supposed to do as a director and what kind of movies you're supposed to do. Not so much that I didn't make the films I wanted to, but I felt that I was a bit more concerned about those aspects instead of just making the film I want. And I think before you've started to like practice doing something, you haven't really learned what to do, but you also have what you have is kind of this like raw interest in something that's kind of like unscathed by the bitterness of other people in the industry. And I think that's a very beautiful thing that I think you should make sure to harness and protect as you start becoming more professional and, you know, get more knowledge, so that you don't kind of like, in a way, remove what's unique about you as a filmmaker because you're afraid that people are going to say things or whatever. So I think you should kind of stay true to who you are, like the rawness of you as an artist. And I think it's easy to lose that a little bit as you start to learn how you're supposed to be, in a way. So maybe that could be like a more specific advice, is to stay true in a sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm basically done with my questions. So any thoughts, any comments, anything you want to say, or?
Really good questions. I had a really good time.